Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa. And I am so grateful and happy to be sitting with Mr. Foxx today. I'm sure if you guys have been watching our previous shows with Bryce had a show with Mr. Foxx a couple of weeks ago, I do believe, which I actually caught. And I absolutely insisted I wanted to chat to him because honestly, there's so much valuable information in the topic that we're going to be chatting about today, which is organic portals. Now, I had no idea what an organic portal was until I actually chatted to Bryce and actually watched the show. So, Mr. Foxx, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me on Aquarius Rising Africa. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me and giving me this opportunity to talk about this valuable information. It's really helped me navigate my spiritual journey to a great extent. So yeah, I look forward to talking about this.
I think it's amazing because I know that also, you know, in with conversations with Bryce that we've spoken about, you've studied the material of the Law of One quite a bit, which I love as well. I've done, you know, I've read quite a bit of that. Gosh, it came to me so many years ago, and it's just amazing. And at that stage, nobody was talking about it. Nobody I knew. A friend of mine gave it to me, so she and I used to discuss it. But it's really good to connect with you, who's actually studied the materials intensively as well. And then you also bring in the whole Cassiopean energy topic.
And the Cassiopean channeling. It's very similar to the raw material. You know, just sort of a disclaimer is you know, I normally don't get into channeling or really following any specific. There's so many people that claim to be channeling out there, and the raw material and the Cassiopeians really set themselves apart. You know, it's funny because the Cassiopeians talk about, you know, channeling dead dudes. A lot of people will just channel, you know, these people on the other side, these sort of lost souls that really don't know any more than we actually know, in a sense. And
really
so,
agree.
Yeah, and you know, and these are very controlled environments where these people channel, you know, and they're very unique channelings in the sense of how they went about it and all the research that these people did before they even started this. You know, it would take too long to really get into the whole backstory of how the raw material came about. But you know, there was maybe like 30 years of research before they even started to head that direction of channeling raw and sort of getting the raw material down. And it's sort of the same with the Cassiopeian material as well. So anyway, those are the only two channelings that I've really paid much attention to in my life. The raw material sort of came to me on accident. I was, you know, I'd already been into spiritual practices for many years before the raw material sort of fell in my lap. And one of my friends was going out of town and wanted me to store some of his stuff at my place. And he gave me this big, you know, amongst everything else, he gave me this big pile of books that I just added sort of to my library. And one of the books was the first book of the four series of the raw material. And just one day, I just so happened to pull that book out and just start reading it. And I could not put it down. I ended up reading that whole thing. And just the first book, it completely transformed my perspective on life on this planet. And so then I immediately went out and ordered the other 3 books and just read them over and over again, you know, because it's really dense information, and it takes a lot of, like, you know, it's not something you can really read all the way through. I mean, I did, but then I would go back and slowly read through it. And you really have to contemplate some of the things that they say in there, because
it's really, I agree. It's something that you sit and you actually digest it. You've really got to sit, you've got to feel it, you know, and it's because it's from a very, very high frequency. It's channeled obviously from very, very high and very intelligent being,
right?
You know, so it's very high frequency. And I think sometimes when and I agree with you about channeling, because I think it can be very, very dangerous. Just to have anyone I would be very aware of that. But I agree with you.
Yeah.
Definitely the law of one material for me. I haven't read the Cassiopean material, but definitely the law of one material. I mean, you feel it, you know that it's just the cells, your cells are telling you, right? It's that kind of feeling. Wow. Yeah. Very amazing. What I find fascinating as well, you said to Bryce, and also again, you know, that to me makes perfect sense. You know, when we were when you were on Bryce's channel, about the Cassiopeans talking about, you know, our future selves basically coming back to that. To me, makes such perfect sense. You know, because when you're looking at full consciousness, right? There is no beginning, there is no end. It is it just is. Time is not linear. It's only on earth here that we make time to be something that is linear. But when we understand, and it's so difficult to get out of the linear thinking as a human being, and just to begin to imagine that there is no beginning, there is no end. The only time really is now, right? So your future self, that part of your consciousness that knows everything, so to speak, is guiding this part of you in your meat suit, because that part of you understands that this part of you is a little bit dumbed down when it comes to certain things.
Well, because we're existing now with a veil over our consciousness, because you know that's how we're able to learn the lessons we need to learn, so we can end up consciously choosing, you know, which way that we're going to polarize. But, you know, I don't know if you remember through the raw material, they said that our higher selves are our self that's already gone through the whole evolutionary process that ends up looping back around to help subtly guide us, or not so subtly guide us, back through to again meet up in the end, which is crazy to think about. And then also the Cassiopeans talk about how they're riding a wave. They are us coming from the future to meet.
Absolutely.
And
I love that.
Yeah. And they're sort of assisting us subtly along the way, because, you know, they'll limit the amount of information that they'll give us because they don't want to interfere with our free will. And that's the most important part. You know, there's no necessarily secret teachings on the positive side. You know, when you're dealing with service to others, there's no secret teachings, but there is teachings and knowledge that can screw with our free will. Yeah. So if they told us too much, revealed too much, then it can affect our path and you know, and help us avoid, which we don't want to, help us avoid certain situations that we can learn from. Yeah,
absolutely.
So they can mess up our whole evolutionary process by you know, infringing upon our freedom.
I love what you said, and not so subtly guiding us.
Right.
Sometimes it's not so subtle. You got to get this wake up and shake up now, otherwise.
Right, yeah. That's why I said
that. Which is quite funny. Yeah. Absolutely. And I agree, and I think that is actually quite amazing to know. But I think so many of us humans can't imagine that brilliant, amazing, beautiful part of us actually is us. So we kind of have to give the credit away often, right? When we say, oh, well, it was my spirit guide, or it was that angel or this archangel or whatever that gave me that message, right? So meanwhile, it's really you.
Exactly. Right? It's really your higher self, for sure. Yeah.
Totally. That takes on the different shapes and forms, if you will, that because your higher self knows exactly how to get to you and how to reach you, right? And how to, you know, to give you the right pictures that are going to make you understand it in the way that you need to, which is quite beautiful, really. It's like a mother or a parent sort of teaching a child, which is quite sweet. It's actually quite lovely.
You know, I remember the Cassiopeans were talking about, you know, there were situations where we went through all the different densities, from first density to second to third, and you know, especially third density, where our consciousness was not veiled. We were third density beings, but we had that higher self connection. So there was no veil that existed. And you would think that we would progress very quickly out of third density into fourth density because of that, but actually it gets us stuck. And it's not so easy to graduate into fourth density without the opportunities of growth that our veil allows us. So our ignorance to these higher realms and higher, spiritual teachings and things like that, that can sort of be a hindrance here on the level that we're existing at, because when life is all, fun and easy, then we have no push to better ourselves. So it's it's the difficulties that we run into that help us to grow and to be able to graduate into the higher realms. And so
absolutely.
And so that really struck me deeply hearing that, as this experiment has been going on, they tried the third density experience with that connection to higher self, and it was basically considered, unsuccessful.
I'm wondering, it's very interesting, but I think I'll ask you that question when we get there, because I'm thinking about what does AI, because I think at the moment with us being in third density, moving into fourth or trying to move into fourth, whether it's positive or negative,
right?
AI, artificial intelligence, right, is the big enemy here. Or should we chat about that now, or do you want to go to the first?
I don't necessarily see it. How would you see that as an enemy?
Artificial intelligence, AI, Meta.
Yeah. Like, are you talking about like I don't know how new it is, but it's becoming more popular. The Chat GPT, I think it's what it's called. Are you talking about that sort of AI, us having access to that, or like when you say
I'm talking about AI the way that the world with technology is going right now, because when you're looking, for example, even as something as simple as kids on their iPads,
right?
I mean, how disconnecting is that? When we research some of the topics, we're looking at how these kids are being groomed through various games, and in fact, including like bestiality, horrible things. So that to me is really the artificial intelligence versus spiritual intelligence. And as long as you are spiritually intelligent, artificial intelligence cannot do anything to you. It's fine to have it in moderation, everything in balance. I mean, without technology, we could not be having this conversation now. But where's the balance? And that's what I'm saying. So when we've lost all sense of our spiritual connection to our creator, then we're going to be hauled off by all these fancy new age machines and technology, because really what I'm seeing more and more is that they're making technology our master. And, so that for me, if we want to look at the beast system, to me, that's what it is. It's technology that and you're going to have people looking, or you're going to, people coming out with all this incredible technology and, oh, yay, they're yet to save humanity with all these amazing things. Meanwhile, all they're doing is really keeping us more entrapped and more enslaved.
And subjecting yourself to that as a trap would be, a personal choice, because, I don't think AI in and of itself is inherently a negative thing.
Use of it, right?
What's that?
It's how we use it, the intention.
Yeah, it's how we use it. You could say that, technology in a sense could be a very positive thing, because from what I understand, like the internet, where you can immediately be in contact with someone from across the world like we are. I feel like that's a very positive thing, because what it's helping us do, it's helping at least those on the service to others path, the positive path, is it's giving us a little taste of what it means to enter into what the raw material calls the social memory complex. And what a social memory complex is when we graduate to fourth density positive, all of our consciousness merges together. So we all take all our past experiences from all different lifetimes and all the lessons that we've learned, and we pull those in together. And so we're all be on the same page. And then as a society, we move along together, constantly sharing information and experience.
And even if we didn't necessarily ourselves live that life,
right,
of whatever, I could then tap into your hologram.
Exactly.
And just by accessing your experience, it would give me an understanding.
Right, exactly.
As if I experienced it.
Yeah. So that, you know, in a sense, is I think what the internet and the cell phones and all of that is for. You know, but we can turn those into something negative. Or, you know, the powers that be or whatever can turn that into something negative, where, you know, because it's really, at the end of the day, it's a battle for your mind. And so they can use this you know, thing that was initially supposed to be a positive experience, you know, and we could still use it as a positive experience. But, you know, there is still that battle within there. And it's not that battle is not going to exist when we're in fourth density. We're still going to be in battle with the service to self. It's just going to become more subtle, and it's going to be, you know, for your mind. I mean, we could see fourth density dynamics playing out right now in our third density as we move closer to crossing that threshold into fourth density positive, which is planet is moving. We can already see there's a battle for the mind happening through technology, and that battle is never going to end. You know, it's just eventually, what the Cassiopeans say is as we get closer and closer to fourth density, especially once we switch over, then the playing field is going to be more leveled, meaning that when your veil is lifted, you can clearly see the battle in all its subtleties. We're not going to be the positive aren't going to be in battle with one another, but we're going to be in battle more intensely with the service to self. You know, and they're never going to give up, because to give up, they're going to depolarize. Yeah, because they're all trying to climb to the top constantly, because that's the whole game. You know, and so,
isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
When you, sorry, just to interrupt you there, you're talking about they want to depolarize, and look, and if we look at Earth itself as a planet of polarity, so couldn't this be also what this whole transgenderism agenda is about, right? To sort of merge the male and female, make it one, and not have that, you know, that polarity of yin and yang, male and female. That, I mean, what you're saying there would make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm really not sure how that necessarily plays into the whole thing. You know, that guy could just be part of the battle for the mind, and
totally.
You know, the more confusion that they can, and on the more distractions. You know, because, you know, also they're trying to distract us, because, you know, the more that they're able, and I say they talk about, you know, the powers that be / really their controllers, which are the fourth and fifth density negative service to self beings, you know.
Absolutely.
And go ahead.
No, sorry. I wanted to just say, when we're looking at this, but I wanted to maybe start talking about the densities. If we can just maybe go through first density, second density, third density, and just sort of maybe if we can, again, give some context around that to our viewers. What is first density when we're looking at first density? What is that?
First density would be a planet where just minerals and water and some plants would exist, and through, you know, the turbulence of all of those minerals interacting with one another, friction and the flowing of water and all that, eventually, and that's the longest density, is first density. But eventually those mineral beings would have enough interaction with each other and enough friction to have enough experience to eventually move into second density, where, you know, more animals, complex animals start to exist. And
so we're getting life now.
Yeah,
so we're starting to create.
I mean, what I understand, there is, some microscopic life on
Yes.
a first density planet as it starts to move closer to second density. And
sorry if I can just say this here. What's very interesting, many years ago, I read a book called A Soul's Journey. And it was very interesting. And what this guy does is he explains in the book that it's like you'll start off, let's say we're talking second density. Let's talk about a tadpole, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a tadpole will be in a, what do you call it? A group of tadpoles? I don't know.
A school of tadpoles, I guess.
or a school or a swarm or a herd, whatever it is, right? So they all kind of move together.
Yeah.
And like as they go along and experiencing life in quite a simplistic form, they might get caught by something.
Yeah.
And then they go again and restart. So it's like really moving through the different experiences of life in its most simplistic form,
right,
and then becoming more complex as we evolve. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And that would be second density experience of a planet.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And now while a planet is going through first density and second density, it can be visited by higher density beings like us as third density beings. If we have the technology, could travel and be able to see and interact with those minerals and those animals. And you'll understand why I'm saying this now, because then we move on to, because we're talking about a planet as a whole, because the planet is a being, as a raw material.
Yes.
Talks about what they call a logos, and so the same thing with a galaxy is a being. Yeah. So this planet has to go through its evolutionary process. So we're not just talking about the minerals, we're talking about the whole planet. Yeah. So the whole planet and everything that exists on top of it and underneath it is all going through the different densities. Yeah. And so the planet goes from first density to second density. Those animals and the planet have the experiences they need to eventually switch over to where it's now can hold third density life. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so those beings, eventually are going to move into, be reincarnated into third density bodies, so that they have the full third density experience. Yeah. And third density, they say, is the shortest density, because a planet can't take much more than a 75,000 year cycle without possibly getting destroyed. It's very stressful for a planet to go through a third density experience, especially the third density experience we're going through here, because this is a rare occurrence of how turbulent our third density is. Extremely rare.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we do a lot of damage to the surface of the planet through pollution and more importantly through our emotions. It's such a charged environment, and the planet takes that in, and it has to. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That to me is very interesting as well, because I'm well aware that Earth will carry the consciousness of the humans and the inhabitants on the planet, right?
Yeah.
So whatever we are experiencing, Earth mirrors back to us. In whatever way she needs to, or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But it makes it also a very, very interesting when you're talking about I want to I've lost my train of thought now. What we were just saying, sorry, before that.
That it was about it being hard, third density being hard on the planet.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and how it's not just the pollution and environmental destruction. More importantly, it's our emotions that are absorbed by the planet and need to be sometimes released as well.
And also because we haven't learned how at this point to deal with emotions really. Because if we're looking at the lower densities, then It's all about instinct, right? So now when we're moving into third density human body, we're learning how to be looking at ourselves, evaluating ourselves, self-study. What is it to be human? What is it to feel? So I think it's, when we're talking about moving from animal into human, it's a very, very interesting transition, because you're now not only feeling and having emotions as well as a gut instinct, right? But you're now learning to have to express it. You're learning to have to relate to someone about it. You're learning to have to talk about what your feelings are. So that, as a healer for I don't know how many years now, has been human beings' strongest challenge, is dealing with emotion. That's for sure.
Yes.
It's like, and obviously the dark side of emotion is pain, right? So emotion is obviously a very happy, joyful, loving also, but then the other side is the pain body, the manipulation, and that's where the destruction comes in, because I would imagine then that Earth has got so much of this energy going on, and human beings are reacting on a physical level to their emotions. So there's violence, there's aggression, there's destruction. Wow, how interesting. Very interesting.
And so so eventually, once a planet, so let me go back. So while a planet is in third density, it cannot house fourth density and above. They basically can't come in here and screw with our free will, because they can really, sort of tweak things for us. Think about how if all of these, pure light beings, as we would see fourth density beings as pure light, if they just came down and started mingling with us and exposing all of these spiritual truths, and it would really screw with things. They would be looked at as, avatars, and we would end up worshiping them. And so, I was saying previous that, those kind of beings and third density beings can have access to first and second density planets. But once a third density starts, it's sort of, in a sense, sort of quarantined off.
Okay.
Sort of a no-go zone for the most part.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that because we're learning still?
We're being put in a controlled environment with a veil over our consciousness. We're being asked to make a choice, because they say that third density is the density of choice, and it's also not the density of knowing. So so when you think you know something, sort of constantly question that, because both the raw material and the Cassiopean say this is not a density of really knowing. It's a density of sort of questioning, but also learning to put your intentions forward towards polarization, either positive or negative.
Absolutely.
Because they're both legitimate paths that both lead to the same place ultimately.
So when we're looking at in 3D now, and every human has a similar body or same body, right? Whether you black, white, green, pink, whatever, 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs. So you can't really discern what's beneath the skin, because that's really what it's about. We all look the same, really, or similar, but we can't really, as you say, see what energy we are actually housing. So with that comes my question. You were saying also in your previous interview, 50% of humans currently on this planet are of service to others. So in other words, like I would imagine healers, just people.
So 50% of the planet are souled beings. Have the potential of moving to fourth density, positive or negative. The other 50% are organic portals and that is a human that only has the 3 lower chakras.
Yeah.
Now, not
makes
saying
sense because
and not saying that 50% of the people that you and I interact with are organic portals, because soul beings tend to run in family units, not necessarily birth family units, but as in people we associate with are most likely going to be other soul beings with the occasional organic portal. And that's also the reverse. Organic portals run in their circles as well, both birth families and social circles. And sometimes you'll get the crossover.
How do we recognize when someone is an organic portal? Now, I know we've understood that they only operate from the lower 3 chakras, which is really money, power, greed, sex.
Yeah, but at the same time, they emulate someone with upper chakras.
Okay, like psychopaths.
Well, that's an ongoing debate.
Okay.
Whether or not an organic portal is, or I could say that organic portal is probably not automatically a psychopath, because that would mean that 50% of the people that are on this planet are psychopaths, and that, thank God, that's not the case.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah. So let's go back a little bit to how can you recognize an organic portal? And that's only with long, close observation. So, the goal isn't to go around and start labeling people as organic portals, because that really makes no difference. If you eventually, through long observation of someone's actions and words and behaviors, once you start figuring out that someone possibly is an organic portal, the best thing to do is just to set a boundary and get yourself away from them, get that person out of your life and let it be, because there's no help for them. Yeah. You need to go on a destructive path and try to destroy them or anything. It's good enough to recognize it and cut that person off without even having to label them, because, it could be a spirited soul in distress that you're seeing as an organic portal. So that's, it's important that we don't start labeling. We don't want to get into the whole black or white thing,
What would be a typical characteristic, let's say, of people who are, if we just have to look at their personality?
Okay. That's hard. Well, for one, someone without real empathy, that's the first sign. But there are definitely more subtle signs, and something I look for, like we're serious people on a serious spiritual path, and we really value those leaps in consciousness that we make through some realizations that we have, and like spiritual insights we have. We get excited when we have those, and we want to share those with other people. And if you offer that over to an organic portal that you have in your circle that happens to find their way in, they're trying to emulate someone with the higher centers, and also at the same time they feed off of our higher centers. That's their sort of food, and so they'll be very quick to do numerous things when you share your experiences with them, your spiritual insights with them. For one, they like to say, for instance, oh, you'll share that with them, and they go, oh, I knew that, or they would act like, oh, I've known that, or they would sort of steal that from you in a sense and start trying to talk about it, and like they had held that same experience. Do you sort of, it's a very subtle thing, but it sort of deadens the potency behind
uh,
those realizations for you. And
it would then seem to me as well that a lot of them could possibly come across then as being quite spiritual.
Oh, totally.
You
Yeah.
know,
They'll do a lot
I
of
mean,
reading and a lot of listening to podcasts or whatever, and they'll memorize all of this stuff, and they'll be able to regurgitate it with no real foundation of work that they've done to get there. Yeah. These are people that are very patient. They're not willing to go through the work that it takes to get to this level of spiritual experience. They would rather just listen to someone and then steal, in a way, sort of steal that away from them.
Yeah.
And then,
Or
act as though that they had those experiences and realizations. Yeah.
absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah. So you'll very rarely see any, an organic portal going through any, spiritual hardships.
So we're looking then, I mean, one of the very interesting things, and I wanted to chat to you about knowing all this, and I'm not sure if you've watched any of our stuff on the channel before, but we deal a lot with whistleblowers who've been victims of satanic ritual abuse,
Yeah.
the cabal, these horrific, victims of child trafficking, horror stories of things that these I don't want to say people, because it doesn't feel to me like a human will do that,
right?
But definitely something that is aping, or aping the most and yet the cover lives that they live. That's what I'm saying. They're aping. They're these perfect little church ladies or ministers, or these charismatic Christians that run these incredible churches and have millions of followers, and you just can't understand why people are falling for that. So they must surely be of this the 50% service to self organic portals.
Followers would most likely be the organic portals. The leaders could be a person polarized negative. So it's good to understand the hierarchy of the negative path, in that there's a negatively polarized being, a service to self being can't go past the fifth density. And past when they move past the fifth density, 6 densities above is all positive. So the highest rung of the ladder that a negative being can go is 5th density. All beings below 5th density that are moving towards polarizing negative are the slaves and servants of the 5th density negative beings. And something to understand is that on the path of service to self, they don't share their teachings with those below, unlike the positive path, where the higher density beings, or just 3rd density service to others beings, enjoy sharing the knowledge of that positive.
Yes.
But
absolutely,
the reverse of that is those service to self beings, when all the 5th density beings want to do is enslave the 4th density beings to the greatest extent that they can. And the 4th density beings want to enslave the 3rd density beings as best they can. Because that's how that's one main way that you polarize greater and greater on the negative path, is to enslave and manipulate people. And so you could say that these big organizations that are steering people, down a seemingly positive path, but it's really negative, the ones at the top are the ones trying to polarize negative, and the ones below are probably either organic portals or they're confused souled beings, which are really the delicacies of those beings. Because so it's good to understand how those on the negative path find greater polarization. They're going to get very little polarization, if any, off sort of scooping in an organic portal, because they're just pawns for them in the game. So they're using their organic portals, their followers, they're using them to ensnare souled beings and to bring them in and to, make willing or unwilling slaves of them, mental slaves. Remember, this is a battle for the mind. And so they're using their congregation of organic portals to ensnare soul beings, because they will polarize to a greater extent when they're able to get a soul being as a slave, or get them mind control. Wow. When I say a slave, I'm just using that as a general term, because that's really, in the end, that's what they're doing, is they're enslaving these people's minds and eventually their souls.
Especially the MK Ultra. And this is why when you're hearing about, selling your soul, it would make a lot of sense as to why they would then want to buy souls, right? They're going to try and lure everyone.
Yeah, so I think it's an incorrect term to say buy souls, because it's tricking those souls, manipulating those souls.
Yeah.
In a very covert way.
You're basically saying, well, you can have money for fame and fortune,
Right.
This is what's required. So it's kind of like they think, and as you say, tricking them. They think they're going to get something really cool and all this fame and fortune, and life is going to be amazing. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, that's really just the beginning of sliding down this slippery hellhole. I would imagine. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I was going to say that it's all about the negative, service of self, finding greater polarity towards the negative. But they can also be they can also be depolarized if they lose in the battle, in a sense, for your soul. So and also the greatest level of polarity that a negative being can get is if they take someone that's on a positive path that is polarizing positive, and they get them to switch around and to do things that are against their morals, and again it goes against their path. But it's a dangerous situation for them, because
that is exactly what you're saying. It makes so much sense when we're hearing these stories of these these guys in these secret societies, the cabal. One of the first things they do, when we're looking at young boys, part of the 12-year-old rituals, that's where they do their first cannibalism. At the 12-year-old ritual. So this is filmed. And not just that. I mean, they are forced and filmed and blackmailed to do the most horrific things, which mostly are against their will, I would imagine, because someone who has a soul does not want to do things like that, right? But you're forced and coerced. So that would make sense then, that this is part of what they're doing, is getting these beautiful young children free, full of energy, full of spiritual gifts, bright and shining with these beautiful little souls. And they're turning them into the people we're seeing ruling our world today. Wow. So it's not so much the portal, the organic portal, who's the evil one. It's really the fourth dimension in negative beings, because they're very freaking clever. I mean, they know, they are super, super intelligent. They've lost their desire to serve. So they are of service to self. But so now, in order for them to serve themselves even more, they have to get the organic portals that are controllable, like you can work on remote control to get them to do their bidding, or not necessarily even get them to do their bidding as well. I mean, look what happened with the Zappity-Doo. How did they divide us there, right? How did they get us humans to turn on each other like that? Wow.
And organic portals can be extremely intelligent, and some of them are very good at blending in. And they're not always constantly being controlled like a puppet. It's just they go about their, it could be that their fourth density controllers make sure that they're in the right place at the right time to make the connections that they need to make to get into a sold service to other person's life, and then once they start getting integrated, then they can start, pushing their triggers. Yeah. And,
would an organic portal, are they necessarily evil or bad, or are they just like a little bit like zombies?
No, they're not necessarily evil or bad. They just go about their lives like almost like robots. You'll see them in a lot of them in like sort of corporate America, the corporate America drones or whatever that just go through
and the whole day. Tick, 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 tick.
Go through the actions and just I would say most of them are pretty benign in a sense. Yeah. They're NPCs, like sort of non-player characters. We need since from what I understand, since the harvestable people here, and it's such a crazy thing to say harvestable, but that's just the term that the raw material uses is, when you get harvested into the next density, there are so few people on this planet that are actually moving towards being harvested, whether it be positive or negative. Since there's so few people, they gotta, it's good that they throw some extras in there, just to make it a little more interesting. But also, I think they were also put here by the higher density service to self people, sort of like,
absolutely.
Sort of like their zombie army in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And people may find that, as you progress spiritually, as you've made your decision to polarize, service to others, and you're really working towards that, you'll find more organic portals entering into your life. Yeah, I a long time ago, and I read some of the Carlos Castaneda books. Don Juan, his teacher, calls them the petty tyrants, and that it was important for Carlos Castaneda to engage with these people, to learn about these people, because it's like the Cassiopeans say, knowledge protects. Your knowledge of certain things will protect you, and your knowledge about how the dark side works is very important to understand, because it teaches you how to deal with these people, and to not sometimes not take them so seriously, and then eventually learning how to spot them and how to set boundaries. But Don Juan was talking about in his teachings how important it was that you had these people in your life, and that it was actually a sign, a positive sign, that you're really progressing along your spiritual path. The more you have them come in, the greater you're starting to polarize, because you start to become like a beacon, a spiritual beacon. They see you, and and they'll send these people out. And that's why I held my cards so close to me now, because I've had so many interactions over the years, something that I've been realizing is, as you get better at dealing with them, and as you create stronger boundaries, they start to send in the really dumb ones that are easy to spot and really easy to take care of. They end up being like little gnats, and because I was talking about before how when a negative service to self being gets their sights on you and goes for an attack, if you are able to overcome that challenge, you depolarize that being. And the greater you are polarized towards your chosen path of service to others, the greater you've polarized, the more depolarization your winning of that battle creates on that negative being. And so they get dropped down rungs, because they're all fighting to get to fifth density through enslaving us. And so when you defeat them, they really suffer for that.
Wow.
So they become
Yeah.
more cautious with you, and that's a good thing. So as you fight and fight and fight, and you learn to deal with these types of people, the the playing field starts to level out more, is
Yes.
what I've gathered, because I have been duped so many times in the past in such major ways, in such painful ways, and it got me to the point to where I just learned how to deal with it, you know, and I have no patience for people that exhibit those characteristics, and I've gotten better at spotting those types of people, you know, whether it be an organic portal or a a, a, a souled person in distress,
I
you
was
know.
going to say struggling soul. Yeah,
It's
because they would generally tend to exhibit the same types of qualities, though,
right,
wouldn't
and
they?
that's why that's why you have to really observe closely, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's a tough one too, because you know, being an empath as we are, you know, and wanting
Mm.
to care for people and help people along their way, you know, at the end of the day, it's really, in a sense, not our responsibility to help everyone that comes along. Yeah, and so,
So true.
you know,
So true.
so you have to learn, when you're a caring person, you know, it's even more important to have healthy boundaries with people. And when you see people starting to act out in a way that you find to be getting close to, you know, organic portal behavior, then that's when, you know, you back off. You know, cultures like India and Japan, where they put their hands in front of their chest and sort of bow, that I think has been a gesture that's been underrated. In that, from what I understand, it's that, you know, instead of like hugging people and bringing them in too close too quickly, you're saying, I respect
Mm.
your boundaries. Yeah,
Yes.
we don't have to
Yes.
necessarily share our karma together, but we can
Yeah.
see one another and be respectful of one another. You know, because it's not necessarily a wise spiritual thing to be hugging on people and bringing them too close too quick. Yeah, because you're going to end
Absolutely.
up getting hurt. And if the other person can't take boundaries like that, then that says a lot about that person, and it says you probably should be careful of that person. You know, these are just lessons I've learned along the way. You know,
It makes a lot of sense, especially when you're doing the
uh-huh.
namaste,
Yeah,
because it really is the light in me honors the light in you. We
right,
understand that we're coming from the same consciousness,
right,
but we are very happy to respect each other's space, and
right,
I agree with that. You don't have to be hugging and holding each other to show any form of affection. And
right.
I agree, because that on a physical level as well
Yeah,
can be quite tricky
yeah,
when we're looking. And again, this brings me to the question, when we talk about energy vampires,
right.
right? This, I would imagine, would also fall in line with that,
Oh,
because they
totally.
would obviously want your light and see it and just
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
back into it, like a fat
Right. Well,
little tick.
since these people don't have their, you know, their upper centers, they're trying to borrow it from us. Yeah. And so that's what you would say would be, you know, you could label that as being an energy vampire. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow,
And
wow,
so
wow.
then, you know, we could move away from, for a second, from organic portals, and understand that there are, you know, some people here that are actually trying to polarize negative. So that's where we run into, you know, the real dangerous ones, the real, you know, sociopaths and the narcissists.
Yes, because those are the guys that consciously make a choice, right?
Right.
They've
Yes.
consciously decided that they want to follow that path of service to self,
Yeah.
where
And you
they
can
believe.
really, those people are very distinguishable, you know, and there are very
Yes,
few. And the Cassiopeans say that it usually only takes someone that has decided to polarize negative one lifetime to do it. They've been working up to it, all these lifetimes being reincarnated. They get to that lifetime where they're like, okay, I'm going to set it up, because we set up our lives before we come down here.
sure.
We we either can do it ourselves using, you know, our higher self to make out our life plans before we come down. We say, okay, I want these challenges. I want this, you know, birth family. So I'm in this situation that'll help me move through. And then once you're down, you forget all that, but still you plan it out. So you're in the right situation where you're saying, okay, I have the foundation here to do my spiritual work so I can move towards polarizing, towards service to others. It's the same thing for service to self. And so for us, it's much harder, I think, to navigate the positive path, and takes many, many tries to get it because it's such a subtle thing. But for service to self, the Cassiopeans say normally they're able to do it in one go.
Yeah, like boom, I'll just take it all.
Hey, right, yeah. They're going to end up being serial killers or you know, dictators or whatever, and they're on a mission, and they're going to show no mercy, and usually I think that it's people that end up living a very short life. I think they come
What's interesting about what you're saying as well, you know, when we're talking about the whole MK Ultra and the mind control and these like high level sociopaths that have really got these positions that are really controlling the masses.
Yeah.
I have on the channel, we have Focus on Australia, and we've spent a lot of time speaking to Australian survivors and whistleblowers. Yeah. And it's a completely orchestrated traffic ring. A lot of these guys are literally put into these boys' homes that are run by the trafficking rings, and they are literally. There was one prolific Australian serial killer. I'll tell you his name, Ivan Milat. Ivan Milat was his name, and one of the guys I interviewed was in the boys' home with Ivan Milat when they were boys. Yeah. And these guys are controlled. They are MK Ultra to become these serial killers. Right. They're like literally given code words and keys. I mean, this one guy was saying to me, like his phone rang and answered, and someone said something weird, and he went, huh? But then his programming had already broken down. Right. And then he realized that he was supposed to then be triggered and go into this other mindset and go and operate. So I mean, I'm not saying people aren't born serial killers. I'm pretty sure that happens pretty regularly. Yeah. But I'm saying that a lot of them are actually controlled and programmed to turn out that way, which is by the fourth D psychopaths, I call them. Right. Whatever they are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it could come down to DNA as well, because the organic portals, it's in their DNA. That's why.
So what DNA are we talking there? I mean, are we talking what DNA? What are we talking? Blood groups? Are we talking bloodlines? Is there anything specific around that?
That I'm not sure. I mean, if DNA, I think DNA runs in bloodlines. So so there would be bloodlines that were all destined pretty much to all be organic portals, with the occasional spirited being that pops up in there, some anomaly within that gene or DNA pool. And then the same thing stands true for souled beings. Normally, a souled being will be born within a souled family.
Yeah. I can, if I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm trying to apply what you're saying to some of the people that I've been working with, especially lately. Yeah. And I definitely can see how a soul being has incarnated into a organic family. Let's call it organic
portal family.
Yeah. Because you can see, and again, I talk about the absolute extremes here, because often these are the kids that they have not been able to break. This one of my viewers, a guy called Ash, Australian as well, born into a pedophile, psychopath, serial killer, sexual something, but what are the cruelest fathers ever, whose cover life is a human rights lawyer, right? And he assists women
Yeah.
in difficult positions. I mean, talk about misogyny at its best.
Yeah.
However, they would try to groom Ash, his son,
Yeah.
because they were trying to make him worse than the dad.
Yeah.
But they could never do it.
Right.
So that's saying, and Ash has come out now, really this beautiful, amazing, very traumatized human, but blowing the whistle, shining light, was never scared of Daddy-O,
Right.
even through the worst times. I mean, the worst stories that father put them through.
Yeah.
But it's incredible to see how, like, and to me, that is one of them who is sold. And it's amazing, like you're saying as well, that not all organic portals are evil, because in these families where you'll find all the kids were abused, in some similar way, but only one will talk. And the others are all too scared to. They're going, no, I don't remember, or no, I'm not prepared to do that, or no, the risk is too high, or something like that. So they'll keep quiet. To me, that's really someone who doesn't have the strength, the heart strength, right? Because they don't have that heart chakra open, that to actually express truth and to set themselves free, because the truth sets us free, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then there's a confusion. It could be that the dad is the being that's trying to negatively polarize, and the rest, and is a souled being, and the rest of the family are souled beings, but they've been abused and sort of beaten down into submission. But then the one person that stands out, that speaks up, could be the wanderer.
Yeah.
And so that gets into a whole other subject of wanderers, and that, we have the organic portals, and then we have the people who are looking to polarize negative, and then we have the people who are looking to polarize positive, and we have the people that fall in the gray area in between, that are souled beings, but just haven't figured out that they're actually in a school, and they haven't even made a decision. They just sort of live their lives and
moseying along.
Yeah, exactly, moseying along, and have the potential of polarizing, but just don't, because they've been caught in whatever, caught in a circle of organic portals or whatever. Then you have the wanderers, and the wanderers are spirited beings, beings with souls. They've been born into a body with the right DNA that has a soul, but they've come from a higher density to come help lighten the planet up a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Now, those are the bravest of souls. Yeah. Those are souls that are coming from usually 6th density, because it takes us 4th and 5th density to end up being innocent and gullible enough to decide to come back down to this crazy house and to help. And we don't, and when you go through all that spiritual progress through 4th and 5th density, and you get to 6th, and you're getting towards the end of 6th density, about to graduate to 7th, you decide that there's a little bit of refinement that you can do to your spiritual self, some lessons that you can learn, but also you hear the calls of the distressed souled beings on this planet, and they hear that call, and they come down to help. And the crazy thing about it is that wanderers are just as veiled as any other being on this planet, and they can get trapped and have to move all the way through 3rd density again if they make the wrong choices. So there have been some that have gotten trapped, and so that's the bravery there, is that they can get caught back in the reincarnation cycle and have
that makes perfect sense. It makes such perfect sense.
So in that family you're talking about, I think that sometimes we could tend to simplify just a little too much and say, oh, this person speaking out must be the only souled being within an organic portal family. But I would see it as different. I would see it as the father was the souled being that was polarizing towards the negative, and the rest of the children were souled beings that, maybe are getting enslaved by the father, so they can't make a choice to polarize positive. And then the savior is the wanderer child that comes in and refuses to be afraid of the father, because it would take someone that powerful, because wanderers, eventually along the spiritual path, people start to realize, like, wait a second, I think possibly I'm a wanderer. And you could start to figure it out. And you could start to step into your own power in that sense, and find some bravery there from that.
I think that it makes such perfect sense. I love that. And again, it's so right what you say. We should never judge a book by its cover, because I do believe, ultimately God is in control. We have no idea who these families are, what's in them. Many of these highly evolved souls are or are really also disguising themselves in ways in the dark, so to speak, in order to get people out of there. In order to know the dark, you have to become the dark. So you absolutely understand their game completely, and then you're able to turn it on their own head and flip it around. And that's really how we also are able to assist people in setting themselves free, right? From this.
And I think at the end of the day, people will find less need to judge or determine whether someone is sold or not. When they establish healthy boundaries in their life, with everyone in their life. And then why do you need to know whether this person is an organic portal or not?
Exactly.
You just feel your way through, and everyone is subjected to a certain extent to your boundaries. And as you get to know people better and better, you could start to soften those boundaries with certain people. But someone with morals is there are going to be boundaries that can never be crossed.
Yes, I agree.
And so it calls for the individual to embark on a greater, deeper soul journey within themselves, and that's the greatest protection at the end of the day.
Spiritual intelligence versus anything else. Nothing compares when you're completely aligned, when you are working yourself and you are doing what you need to be doing. And really, more than anything, living a happy, joyful life, So even when shit hits the fan, it's thank you, God, for the shit hitting the fan. What didn't I see? What I need to see through the shit. That for me is really what it's about. That moment of gratitude, of understanding that there's something to be learned through each and every experience. And even if you have met a fourth density negative polarization of Hitler status, there's something there for us to learn, right? And I think that's important for us to realize as humans. Wow, how fascinating. How absolutely fascinating. Wow, Mr. Foxx, I know that we've kind of gone over time here anyway, but I'm wondering if there's anything else. I mean, I'd love to have you back. I think there's so much to talk about. Are you happy to come back again at some point?
Yeah, I've enjoyed this. Yes, I'll come back.
I'd love to chat further with you on this.
So many different directions we can take this in,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would love to. So I'm definitely going to catch up with you after the show, and we can decide when we want to take it further again.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you would like to say to our viewers just in ending?
No, not really. But if people are curious about learning more about the Cassiopeians or the raw material, there's all the raw material books you can download for free PDF on LL Research website, or you can buy the books and help support LL Research. There is also, so the Cassiopeian material I suggest, as well as Laura Knight, the main channeler of the Cassiopeians, suggest that you read her book series called Riding the Wave. And there, I think, are 7 books in that series. But, getting through just the first book will help you understand how they got to where they are now with channeling that material. And like I said, 99.9% of channeling, I feel, is bullshit. And I don't even mess with it,
I agree.
So anyway, if you want to learn about because you could go and you could read all the Cassiopeian transcripts from the very beginning when it started up until now, but it needs to be put into context.
Yes,
I
agree.
And to read the first book or 2 in that Ride the Wave series helps to put all that information in context. And it's a really fun journey to go through those books.
It's amazing.
You learn so much, and the Cassiopeians, the way that they communicate is just it's really unique. They don't beat around the bush, and they don't coddle people, and they don't just give you the answers. They make you go. They make that group that was channeling them go in and do the research and figure stuff out for themselves, and then come back and present it to them. And then they'll tell them whether they're hot or cold or whatever, or help steer them a little bit. But it's it was a journey for them, and as it should be for all of us. And they want you to take all that information with a grain of salt, because they want you to go in and do that inner work.
And see what resonates, right, for you as an individual, because that's really how we're going to reclaim our intelligence and our power, really, is by starting to think and feel for ourselves and act in accordance with that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yay, well, this has been such fun, and I definitely look forward to having you back again. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It
was great. And to all our viewers, thank you so much for watching this very, very interesting show. Like, share, subscribe, please, if you haven't already. This is such important information to get out. Really, it is. The more we know, the more we can understand, and knowledge really is power. So, God bless you all. Take good care of yourselves, and I shall see you very, very soon.